Hi, this is Jen from Bumble Monkey. Today we're going to work on section 4 of Keep Calm and Crochet-on UK's 2016 Crochet-a-long, the Groovyghan, and this section is called Circle Your Granny Square. For this project, following Heather's pattern exactly, you're going to need 4 colors of yarn, the same yarn hook you've used for the previous sections, your yarn needle, and scissors. And this is not your typical granny square clusters. This one actually has a couple of different stitches, which creates the really neat look, especially right here where it looks a little pointy. This looks like a star in the center there. Oops, sorry. And I really like this one. It's so pretty. I've seen so many color variations on it, and I'm really jealous of some people's color choices. To get started, you're going to pick up your first color. For me, this is going to be orange, and you are going to chain 4, and then you're going to put your hook into the very first chain that you made, and we're going to put in a slip stitch there and make a circle. I'm using yarn scraps, so my yarn is really messy. Okay. And you want to pull your circle open and see right in the very center there, that's where you want to put your hook. We're going to chain 2. This does not count as a stitch, and don't be confused by this first stitch here, the double crochet 2 together. It's just like you would any other double crochet 2 together, but you don't have any stitches to work with. So you're going to yarn over, put your hook into the very center of that ring. You're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, so you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops. Don't finish off. You're going to yarn over, put your hook back into the center of the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, so now you have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops. You now have 3 loops on your hook. Now yarn over and pull through all 3. That's all that you're going to do for that stitch. Now you're going to chain 2, and you're going to do another double crochet 2 together. So again, yarn over, put your hook into the center of the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, put your hook back through the center of the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through the last 3, chain 2, and you're going to do another double crochet 2 together. Yarn over, put your hook through the center, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, put your hook back through the center, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. And you want to make 6 of these clusters in total. So I'm just going to finish that off. Another chain 2, double crochet 2 together. I now have 4. Chain 2, double crochet 2 together. I now have 5 there. Chain 2, double crochet 2 together. And then you are going to chain 2, and then you are going to join to the top of the first double crochet 2 together, and if you take a look, you may not see it very clearly here, but I have my chain 2 right there, and then this is my stitch here. The stitch is actually right there. So you put your hook in there, yarn over, and you're just going to create a slip stitch. Okay. Now you're going to cut off your yarn and you're going to weave in the ends, and then you're going to join your second color. So I'm going to pause the video quickly and I'm going to do that, and I will be right back. Alright, so I have finished weaving in my ends, and as you can see I have this nice little circle here with some nice little pointy ends on it. And now what we're going to do is start row 2 or round 2. And you want to take your second color, in this case mine is green, and you want to join your yarn using your favorite joining method to any of these chain 2 spaces. So just pick your favorite. When I join, I just wrap my yarn around the hook and pull it through. You may have a completely different way, and that's okay. Now we're going to chain 2. This does not count as a stitch. And we are going to double crochet 2 together, just like we did in the first row. So yarn over, put your hook into that chain 2 space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, put your hook back into the chain 2 space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Now you're going to chain 3 and do another double 2 crochet together into that exact same chain 2 space. I just realized my circle looks like a pumpkin. That was not what I intended. Sorry, I'm just double checking my notes here. Okay, and then you're going to now work into the next chain 2 space. You're going to do another double crochet 2 together, chain 3, and double crochet 2 together, and we're going to follow that all the way around. Just going to work through this pretty quickly here. Oops. Alright, I'm now working in my last chain 2 space here. If you need to, just rewind the video a bit. Okay, So we're not going to do any chains or anything, but we are going to join with the top of this first double crochet 2 together. There's our stitch there. Hope you can see that. And just join with the slip stitch. And that is it for row 2. And now we want to cut our yarn, weave in our ends, and join the third color. So bear with me just a moment. I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so I have finished weaving in my ends, and now we're going to start round 3 by joining our third color, and this is going to be purple for me. And now we're going to join our yarn to any chain 3 space that you have, and you're going to chain 3, and this one does count as a stitch. And then you're going to double crochet twice into that same chain 3 space. Oops, sorry. Okay, sorry, I just had to double check my notes there. Okay. Now that you've done your first cluster in there, you don't want to skip to your next chain 3 space. You want to work your next one into this stitch, or in between these 2 stitches here. So you want to put 3 double crochets into that space. And you want to put 3 double crochets into this stitch, or into the chain 3 space, I mean. Three double crochets in between the 2 double crochet 2 togethers. And you just want to repeat this all the way around. And you should notice by now the very pretty effect it has by making each of these look like another star point. Oops, I messed that one up. Okay, I'm coming close to the end here. I only have 2 more cluster stitches to make. And the cluster is the 3 double crochets in the same space. Okay, so when you have reached the end, you are going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. And then you're going to cut your yarn and weave in your ends. And when you go to start round 4, you are going to use your first color, yarn A, which is the one in the center. So I'm going to pause the video and weave in my ends. Alright, so my ends are woven in. We're going to start round 4. And we are going to join our first color of yarn in between any of the cluster stitches there. It honestly doesn't matter. And we're going to, we're going to chain 2, and this does not count as a stitch. Need a little bit more yarn there. And we're going to put in a double crochet 2 together into this space here. Chain 3 and another double crochet 2 together into the same space. Sorry, that one doesn't look very pretty because I didn't do it right at all. In my mind I wanted to do a double crochet. And now you want to continue that on in between each of the cluster stitches all the way around. I'm going to do a few with you, and then I'm going to pause the video and work my way around and come back at the very end. So by now you should have the double crochet 2 together stitched down pat. Probably done enough of them by now. Okay, so I have done 3, and now I'm going to continue that all the way around to the very end. I'm going to pause the video and come back to the very end. Alright, so I am at the end of my round 4, and now you are just going to, just like the first 2 rounds that you did, you are going to join to the top of the double crochet 2 together, the very first one that you have. Just join it with the slip stitch. And then you're going to cut your yarn and weave in your ends. So again, I'm going to pause the video and I will be right back. Okay, my ends are woven in, and we're going to start round 5. And you will want to join with the second color of yarn that you have. So for me, this is green. We're going to join our yarn to any chain 3 space, as per usual. Oops. This is what happens when you try to crochet tired. Okay. And you are going to chain 3. This counts as a stitch, double crochet, and we're going to put 2 more double crochets into this chain 3 space. And this will make our first cluster. And then we're going to put 1 cluster in between the 2 double crochet together stitches here. So there's 3 double crochets there. And then 1 more cluster into this chain 3 space, so 3 double crochets into there. One cluster in here, in between these 2 stitches. And we're just going to repeat that all the way around. Once you get to the very end, you are going to join with a slip stitch to the top of your chain 3. You're going to cut your yarn and weave in your ends. So I'm going to finish this round and I'm going to weave in my ends. So I have finished off my round 5 and I have woven in my ends. We're going to start with round 6 and it's pretty much identical to round 5. So you're going to join your yarn to in between any of the cluster stitches. You're going to chain 3, it counts as a stitch. You're going to put 2 more double crochets into that same space to finish off your beginning cluster. Oops. Sorry, making a bit of a mess here. There's my beginning cluster, and now you want to put 1 more cluster in between the next 2 cluster stitches from the previous round. So 3 double crochets go into that space. 1 cluster stitch in between the next 2 cluster stitches. And you're going to continue that all the way around. When you get back to the beginning, you want to join with a slip stitch to the top of your chain 3. So I'm going to go ahead, finish off this round, and weave in my ends. And I'll meet you at the end. So I am finished my round 6. I've woven in my ends, and one thing you may notice, and it's perfectly okay, you may see that it's starting to bubble a little bit or ripple, just like mine has here. This will straighten out or flatten out when you have finished the rest of the square. Just like in my black, gray, and white one here, as you can see, there are no more ripples because it ends up being nice and flat. So we're going to start round 7. Going to join your first color. So you're going to join your yarn in between any of the cluster stitches here. I'm going to pick this one here. And just double checking my notes. I'm going to chain 1 here. You can join with a slip stitch. I have done it before. I always tend to mess up a little bit, so I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to put a single crochet into that space there. Now, so I'm going to grab a little bit more yarn here. I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to put a single crochet into this next space. Going to chain 3, 1 single crochet into the next space, chain 3, 1 single crochet into the next space, and we're going to continue that all the way around. Once you get to the end, you are going to join to the single crochet that you first made. You're going to cut your yarn, weave in your ends, and then we're going to do something a little different. I'll meet you there. Alright, so my round 7 is finished here. We're going to start round 8, and we're going to start making our circle look more like a square. I bet you're wondering, I thought you said at the beginning of this video that there are supposed to be 4 colors. And there are. So you want to take your 4th color. You're going to join it to any of these wonderful chain 3 spaces here. and you are going to chain 3. This does count as a stitch, counts as a double crochet, and you're going to put 2 more double crochets into that same chain 3 space. Picking that up. I'm going to chain 3, and then you're going to put another cluster stitch into the very same chain 3 space. And this is going to be the first corner of your square. Now into this chain 3 space you're going to put 1 cluster stitch, so 3 double crochets. Oops. In the next chain 3 space you're going to put 3 half double crochets. This chain 3 space you're going to put 3 single crochets. Oops, I keep splitting my yarn. Three half double crochets in the next chain 3 space. One cluster stitch in the next, so 3 double crochets. Now you're going to make another corner, so 1 cluster stitch, chain 3, and 1 more cluster stitch in the exact same spot, and I just split my yarn again. So as you can see, while it is still curved, it will actually eventually start looking like a square. Sorry, I'm just going to readjust myself here. Sitting too long in the same position. Okay, so now that we've made our second corner, we're going to put in a cluster stitch into the next chain 3 space. Stepping on my yarn. Then 3 half double crochets. 3 single crochets. Oops, that is the completely wrong stitch. As you can see, there's my wonderful woven end. I'm going to see if I can hide that with these stitches. Nope, I failed. I'll trim that later. Okay, so I've done 3 single crochets in there, 3 half double crochets into the next chain 3 space, one cluster stitch into the next. Oops. As you can tell, I'm really tired now. It's almost midnight where I am. And then we're going to make another corner, so we're going to put in a cluster stitch into this chain 3 space, chain 3, one more cluster stitch into the same space, as you can see, we now have 2 curvy sides and 3 corners. I'm going to finish off the last little bit here. So, one cluster stitch into the next chain 3 space, three half double crochets into this space, three single crochets, three half double crochets, one cluster stitch, going to make our next corner, so one cluster stitch, chain 3, one more cluster stitch, there's our corner. Might help if I actually centered that. And now a cluster stitch into the next chain 3 space. We are on the final side of our round 8. Three half double crochets, three single crochets, oops, again the completely wrong stitch, three half double crochets, one more cluster stitch, there we go, and then you're going to join to the top of the chain 3 from the beginning of your round. Join with the slip stitch. Bear with me just a moment. Take a look at my pretty work. Okay, so we are not going to cut our yarn here. I already knew that. I just had to scroll through my pattern. I have my computer behind me. And now you're going to slip stitch to this chain 3 space here. So slip stitch to the next few stitches. And if you're new to my videos, I don't like to put the slip stitch into the chain. I find it's kind of a hassle, so I just put it into the chain space. There's my slip stitch. Okay, so we're going to chain 3, and this counts as a double crochet. We're going to put 2 more double crochets into this chain 3 space to make our cluster. I'm going to chain 3. I'm going to put in cluster stitch into the exact same space because we want to continue on our corner. Don't want our corner to move on us. Sorry, I need some more yarn here. And now you want to put a cluster stitch in between these two sets of stitches here. One second. Alright. Okay. And then cluster stitch in here, in between the next set. Cluster stitch in between the 3 half double crochets and the 3 single crochets. Another cluster stitch in between there, between the 3 single crochets and half double crochets this time. One cluster stitch in between the half double crochets and the cluster stitch from the previous round. One cluster stitch between these 2 cluster stitches from the previous round. And we're at our next corner, so we're going to do a cluster stitch, chain 3, and another cluster stitch into the same chain 3 space. And you're going to continue those cluster stitches all the way around until you get to the very end. And at the very end, you are not going to cut your yarn. I am going to end the first part of this video, and we're going to start the second part.